Your struggle isn't a sign of weakness. It's proof you're human. Somewhere along the way, we bought into this lie that strength means never breaking, never bending, never letting the tears roll down our face. We've convinced ourselves that if we admit we're tired, if we confess that the weight is heavy, somehow that makes us less. But the truth is, the struggle is not your shame. It's your testimony and process. You don't have to hide from it, because the very thing you're trying to cover up is the evidence that you're still in the fight. There's something powerful about acknowledging that you are human. That means you're going to face battles that push you past your limits. That means you're going to carry burdens that make you question your own strength. But humanity is not a curse. It's the canvas where God paints his grace. If you were meant to be perfect, there would be no need for his presence in your life. The cracks in your heart are the very places where his love seeps through. So instead of trying to hold it all together, maybe it's time to accept that being human means being fragile sometimes, being weary sometimes, and still standing anyway. We live in a culture that celebrates resilience without ever showing the breaking point that led to it. We clap for the victory, but stay silent about the nights someone cried themselves to sleep, about the days they questioned whether they'd even make it out alive. We glorify the end result, but ignore the messy middle. And so we carry shame for feeling weak, when in reality the struggle is the proof that you are still moving, still trying, still holding on. Weakness doesn't make you less worthy. Weakness doesn't cancel your calling. Weakness is the soil where strength grows. Think about it. If life were meant to be flawless, you wouldn't need faith. If the road were always smooth, you wouldn't know how to pray. The struggle you're facing right now is not punishment. It's preparation. It's God reminding you that even when you feel like you can't take another step, he's already carving a way through. But here's the catch. You have to be willing to admit where you are. Too many of us are walking around with broken pieces, pretending we're whole, pretending we're fine, pretending we're not one deep breath away from falling apart. And yet, God can't heal what you keep hidden. He can't fix what you won't release. So, when I tell you that your struggle is proof you're human, I'm also telling you that your humanity is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of surrender. When you lift your hands, not in strength, but in desperation, you open the door for God to step in. When you stop trying to be invincible, you make room for the one who already is. And maybe that's the whole point, not to walk around like you have it all figured out, but to recognize that even in your brokenness, you are still chosen, still seen, still loved. There's someone here who's been carrying something for so long, you've started to confuse it with your identity. You've carried struggle so closely to your chest that you think it defines you. But let me tell you, it doesn't. The struggle is not who you are. It's what you're going through. It's temporary. It's a season. And just because you're in the middle of it doesn't mean you're going to stay there. Being human means you'll face it. But being God's means you won't be crushed by it. Don't let shame tell you that you're weak because you're struggling. Don't let fear convince you that you're disqualified because you're tired. Don't let the whispers of the enemy make you think you failed because you couldn't carry it alone. You were never meant to. Struggle isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence of life. It's evidence that you're still fighting, still pressing, still hoping, even when it hurts. And the God who sees you in your struggle has already written the ending to your story. So instead of asking yourself, why am I so weak? Maybe start asking, why am I still standing? Because even when you thought the struggle would take you out, here you are. You're still here. You may be bruised. You may be tired, but you're not finished. And as long as you're breathing, there's still purpose in your pain. Stop pretending you're fine when you're breaking inside. That's the trap so many of us fall into. We learn how to wear a smile that doesn't match our soul. how to say, I'm okay, when the truth is we're anything but. We've become professionals at masking pain, at dressing up brokenness, so that no one has to see the mess we're carrying. But here's the reality. God doesn't bless the mask you wear. He blesses the truth you bring to him. He doesn't heal the character you've created for people to admire. He heals the wounds you've been too afraid to expose. There is a freedom that comes when you decide you don't have to fake it anymore. Pretending might get you through a conversation, but it won't get you through a crisis. Pretending might protect your reputation, but it will suffocate your spirit. We put so much energy into keeping up appearances that we lose the chance to experience authentic healing. And maybe that's why some of us are still carrying the same battles year after year. Not because God can't heal it, but because we've never been honest enough to hand it over. I know what it feels like to walk into a room and feel like you have to be strong for everybody else, even when you're crumbling inside. I know what it's like to silence your own tears because you don't want anyone to know you're breaking. But let me tell you, you don't have to keep living like that. The strongest thing you can do isn't pretending you're fine. It's admitting you're not. The bravest prayer you can pray is the one that says, God, I don't have it together. I'm hurting. I'm tired. And I need you. We've been trained to believe that admitting pain makes us weak. But the truth is, pretending makes us weaker. When you bury your struggle, it doesn't go away. It just festers in the dark. When you silence your pain, it doesn't disappear. It just gets louder in your heart. And the longer you keep hiding it, the heavier it becomes until you can't carry it at all. That's why God calls us to bring it to him, not in the polished version, not with the fancy words, but in the raw honesty of where we really are. Some of you have been showing the world your highlight reel while fighting battles behind closed doors that nobody knows about, and you're exhausted, not just from the struggle itself, but from the performance of acting like you've got it all together. You don't have to keep living in that performance. God isn't moved by the show. He's moved by sincerity. He's not waiting for you to impress him. He's waiting for you to trust him with the truth. There's a story being written in your life that can only be unlocked when you stop pretending. Healing happens in honesty. Transformation happens in transparency. Breakthrough begins when you bring your brokenness out of hiding and place it in God's hands. Pretending might make people clap for you, but surrendering will make heaven move for you. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather have God's presence in my pain than people's applause for my performance. Sometimes the greatest release is found in the tears you didn't want anyone to see. Sometimes the most powerful moment of faith is when you admit, I can't do this alone. And that's not weakness. It's wisdom. That's not failure. It's faith. Because God can work with the real you, not the image of you. He can work with the messy you, not the polished version you present to the world. And if you're willing to stop pretending, you'll finally discover that the grace you've been searching for was waiting for the authentic you to show up. So if you're breaking inside, stop hiding it. If you're hurting, stop masking it. If you're weary, stop pretending you're strong enough to carry it all. There is no healing in pretending. There is no freedom in performance. The God who created you, who knows every detail of your heart, is not asking for your perfection. He's asking for your honesty. Letting go isn't losing control, it's gaining peace. Somewhere along the way, we started to believe that if we don't keep our hands on everything, everything will fall apart. We convince ourselves that if we're not managing, fixing, and carrying it all, the world will somehow crumble around us. And so we hold tighter, we grip harder, we stretch ourselves thinner, thinking that control will give us security. But the truth is, control isn't peace, it's pressure. Control doesn't calm your heart, it wears it out. And the longer you hold on to what was never meant to be in your hands, the heavier it becomes until it breaks you from the inside out. Peace doesn't come from having every answer. Peace doesn't come from manipulating outcomes or trying to figure out what tomorrow will look like. Peace comes when you say, God, this is bigger than me. I can't do this without you. That's the kind of release that brings rest. That's the kind of surrender that lets your soul breathe again. Because letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to begin with. I know you want to fix it. I know you want to make it work, to hold it together, to make it make sense. But what if the very thing you're fighting to control is the thing God is asking you to release? What if the reason you're so tired, so drained, so anxious is because you're holding on to something He's been asking you to put down? Sometimes the weight we carry isn't even our own. It's borrowed from expectations, from fears, from people's opinions, from timelines we never created. And yet we carry it like it's our responsibility to make the whole world balance. There's a beauty in realizing that surrender isn't failure. It's trust. It's saying, God, I may not know how, but I know you. And that knowing is enough to carry you through the uncertainty. You don't have to figure everything out. You just have to place it in the hands of the one who already has. That's where peace lives. Not in the control you think you need, but in the release you've been avoiding. The truth is, control feels safer in the moment, but it robs you of rest in the long run. You lose sleep trying to plan every outcome. You wear yourself out replaying every scenario. You keep revisiting the past, hoping that if you could just understand it better, it would hurt less. But letting go doesn't mean you dismiss the pain. It means you hand it over. It means you decide that your heart deserves rest more than your pride deserves control. It means you choose peace over pressure, trust over tension, faith over fear. Some of you have been holding on so tightly that your hands are bleeding. You've been clenching your fists around people, around dreams, around situations that are no longer in your control. And God is saying, if you would just open your hands, I could place something new inside them. But as long as you're gripping what's breaking you, you'll never have space to receive what's meant to heal you. Peace is not found in holding on. It's found in releasing. And I get it. Letting go feels risky. It feels like losing. It feels like stepping into the unknown without a safety net. But what if that unknown is where God's plan unfolds? What if the thing you're trying so hard to keep together is the very thing keeping you from stepping into what's next? Sometimes the only way to win is to release the fight. Sometimes the only way to find peace is to stop chasing control. Letting go isn't giving up. It's growing up. It's recognizing that your strength has limits, but God's strength does not. It's understanding that peace is not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of surrender. And when you finally unclench your fists, when you finally say, God, I trust you more than I trust myself, you'll realize that peace was waiting for you the whole time. God can turn the very thing that tried to break you into the thing that builds you. That's the part we don't always see when we're in the middle of the storm. All we feel is the weight of it, the pain of it, the fear that this might be the thing that finally takes us out. But if you've lived long enough, you know that sometimes the places that hurt you the most become the places where God shows up the strongest. The cracks in your story become the chapters where His glory shines the brightest. And what was meant to destroy you ends up developing you in ways you never could have imagined. Think about the things you've survived that you didn't think you would. Think about the nights when the tears wouldn't stop falling. The days when the burden felt unbearable. The moments when your heart was convinced it couldn't take one more disappointment. And yet, here you are. You didn't just survive, you learned. You didn't just endure, you grew. You didn't just walk away with wounds, you walked away with wisdom. That's what God does. He doesn't let your pain be wasted. He transforms it into power. There is something sacred about struggle because it reveals strength you didn't know was in you. It pushes you to pray prayers you never thought you'd pray. It makes you lean into God in ways you wouldn't have if life had always been easy. And in the middle of that breaking, He is shaping, molding, and preparing you for what's next. The very thing that tried to shatter you is often the same thing that sharpens you. That's why you can't give up in the middle. The breaking is not the ending. It's the beginning of something new being built inside of you. It's easy to worship when everything is going well. It's easy to believe when the doors are opening and the blessings are flowing. But real faith is born in the dark. Real faith is forged in the fire. Real faith is when everything looks broken and you still whisper, God, I trust you. And in that moment, heaven leans in because that kind of faith can't be faked. That kind of faith only comes from walking through what was meant to break you and realizing it can't have you. Some of you are in a season right now that feels unbearable. You feel like the weight is too heavy, like the loss is too great, like the pain is too deep. But what if I told you that this very season is building you in ways you can't see yet? That the same storm you think is destroying you is actually watering the seeds God planted in you. That the pressure you're under isn't crushing you. It's producing something in you that will prepare you for what's coming. That's the power of God. He takes the mess and turns it into a message. He takes the broken pieces and builds something beautiful out of them. We often pray for God to remove the struggle, but sometimes he allows it because he knows what it's producing. If he answered every prayer with an immediate escape, we'd never grow roots deep enough to stand strong when life gets harder. He's not trying to break you. He's building you. He's strengthening your faith, developing your character, and teaching you how to rely on him in every season. And when you look back, you'll realize that the thing that almost broke you was the very thing that birthed your strength. Don't despise the breaking, because it's often the birthplace of your breakthrough. Don't curse the pain, because it may be the tool God is using to build your purpose. Don't give up in the middle, because what feels like the end is often the moment right before the shift. You may not see it now, but one day you'll understand why you had to walk through what you did. One day you'll look back and say, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. Your struggle doesn't define you, your surrender does. Too many of us walk around carrying our scars like they're the final word on who we are. We look at the mistakes we've made, the failures we've endured, the seasons we didn't handle well, and we let those things speak louder than the truth of God over our lives. We start to believe the labels people gave us when we were hurting. We start to internalize the pain we went through until we think the struggle itself is our identity. But hear me, your scars are not your story. They are just the evidence that you survived. The definition of who you are is not wrapped up in what you went through, but in the way you choose to surrender it. There's something powerful about surrender because it shifts the focus from what tried to break you to who is holding you together. Struggle says, this is what happened to me. Surrender says, this is who God is in me despite what happened. Struggle wants to define you by your lowest moment. Surrender wants to redefine you by his grace. And that's where the transformation happens. When you stop letting your wounds write your name and start letting your faith tell your story. I know it feels easier to hold on to the struggle because it's familiar. It feels safer to define yourself by what you've been through because you've lived it, you've carried it, you've survived it. But what if God is saying, that's not who you are anymore. That's not your identity. That's just a chapter in your journey. You don't have to keep rehearsing the pain when you've been given the power to release it. You don't have to keep shrinking under the weight of your past when you've been invited to rise and surrender. The danger of letting struggle define you is that it convinces you to stop growing. You start believing that your pain is permanent, that your failure is final, that your mistakes are who you are. But surrender breathes hope back into your life. Surrender says, I may not understand everything I went through, but I trust the one who brought me through it. Surrender takes the pen out of struggle's hand and places it back in God's. And when he writes your story, it's always greater than the one your pain tried to write for you. Some of you have been carrying labels for too long. Maybe it's unworthy. Maybe it's failure. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's too much or not enough. And you've let those labels define how you see yourself, how you treat yourself, and even how you believe God sees you. But when you surrender, those labels lose their power. You realize that the only name that matters over your life is the one God has already spoken, chosen, beloved, redeemed, enough. Struggle cannot cancel that identity. Pain cannot erase that truth. What you went through may have shaped you, but it does not define you. When you surrender, you're making a declaration. My life is not defined by what happened to me. My life is defined by who I place it in the hands of. That kind of surrender doesn't erase your scars, but it changes what they mean. They no longer remind you of where you broke. They remind you of where God healed. They no longer carry the shame of what happened. They carry the testimony of what God did. The world wants you to believe that your strength is found in pretending you've never struggled. But real strength is found in surrender, admitting that you couldn't carry it on your own and placing it in the hands of the one who always could. And that kind of surrender doesn't make you weaker. It makes you unshakable. Because once you know your story is rooted in God and not in your struggle, there's nothing anyone can say or do to take that away. So stop letting the struggle define you. Stop letting the weight of what you've been through convince you that you're disqualified from what God has for you. Your surrender is what defines you. Your surrender is what aligns you with peace. Your surrender is what reminds you that even in the middle of the pain, you're still chosen, still loved, still called. Trust the hands that hold what you cannot handle. That's not just a statement. It's a lifeline, because the truth is, life will hand you things that are too heavy, too complicated, too painful for you to manage on your own. And for too long, some of us have been trying to juggle what was never meant to be in our grasp. We convince ourselves that if we just try harder, if we just think smarter, if we just push a little longer, maybe we can make it work. But what happens when you've done all you can and the weight still crushes you? What happens when the thing you've been carrying starts carrying you into exhaustion, into anxiety, into despair? That's when you realize your hands were never meant to hold it. There's something humbling about knowing your limits. It's not weakness to admit that you can't handle everything. It's wisdom, because the reality is your hands were never designed to manage every burden, every outcome, every struggle. That's why we have a God whose hands are bigger than ours, whose grip is stronger than ours, whose capacity is limitless. And the moment you release what you cannot handle into his care, you'll find a peace you couldn't find when you were trying to control it all yourself. We live in a world that teaches us to idolize independence. We're told to prove ourselves, to show we can do it all, to never let anyone see us sweat. But faith doesn't operate in independence. It thrives in dependence. It's in those moments when you finally whisper, God, I can't do this without you, that his power meets your surrender. Trust isn't built in the sunshine when everything feels easy. Trust is built in the midnight hour when everything feels uncertain. That's when you learn how steady his hands really are. Some of you are carrying battles in silence because you don't want anyone to know you're struggling. You've been trying to hold it all together for your family, for your children, for your career, for your image. And inside, you're breaking. But God is saying, if you would just give it to me, I could carry it for you. His hands don't slip. His hands don't shake. His hands don't fail. The same hands that shape the world are the hands that want to hold your heart, your burdens, your fears. And those hands are safer than any place you've ever tried to place your trust before. It's not easy to let go. Trusting God with what you can't handle means you have to give up the illusion of control. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers, and that can feel scary. But what's scarier? Continuing to drown under the weight of what you were never meant to carry, or choosing to trust the one who has never dropped a single promise. You can keep exhausting yourself trying to manage it all, or you can finally breathe knowing it's in hands that will never let it fall. There's power in recognizing that your future isn't safe in your own grip. You might let go out of fear. You might fumble under pressure. But God's hands never lose what he holds. And when you trust him with what you can't handle, you begin to realize that the very thing you thought would crush you becomes the thing that carries you into purpose. That heartbreak you thought would destroy you becomes the testimony that heals someone else. That failure you thought would define you becomes the lesson that shapes your destiny. That storm you thought would sink you becomes the wave that pushes you closer to him. If you've been trying to carry it all on your own, maybe this is the moment to loosen your grip. Maybe this is the moment to say, God, I can't, but I believe you can. Because the hands that hold you don't just carry your pain. They cradle your future. They don't just hold your struggle. They hold your promise. And when you finally release it into his hands, you'll find a rest that no amount of control could ever give you.